Welcome to Newslaundry Chhota Hafta. For the full episode, subscribe because it is behind the paywall and only subscribers get access to uncut, complete content. Newslaundry Hafta is our weekly wrap of all that made the news, all that didn't, and all that should have and all that shouldn't have. We agree, we disagree, we critique, and occasionally we beat each other up. But it's all good fun. Subscribe.
This is a Newslaundry podcast and you're listening to NL Hafta.
अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज़ लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. Welcome to another episode of Hafta from the second week of the World Cup and from a relatively clean Delhi as far as the air is concerned. It's not as bad as we have gotten used to. Joining us in the studio today is Krishn Kaushik and Raman Kirpal.
Hi.
I'll just introduce Krishn to you because he is not part of News Laundry. Joining us on the phone line from Kashmir is Mehraj, who is very much part of News Laundry.
Hello.
And Sowmiya Ashok joins us on the phone line, and I'm guessing from Chennai.
Yes, that's right. Hello.
Hi. So Sowmiya is an independent journalist, and she's a writer based in Chennai. She was a China correspondent for the Indian Express previously. So how long were you in China?
About a year, actually 11 months.
Oh, I see. Okay. And what made you come back?
Express made me come back. I was just there for 2019.
I see. Oh, so you were just there before the virus
Just
broke.
before COVID started. Yeah. I came back, I think, mid-December.
So you could have brought it back with you, basically.
She could have been the first case in India.
I wasn't patient zero. Others were, not me. Not yet.
Okay. And Krishn Kaushik is a journalist based in Delhi. He most recently worked with
I work with OCCRP, which is an international investigative consortium.
Yes.
I work with them as a journalist in South Asia.
And before that, you've been with Express.
Yeah.
And the Caravan.
That's right.
And now you are?
Still with OCCRP.
Great. Now, before we get into the discussions, and there are three exciting discussions that I want the panel's views on, let's get the headlines first, which Mehraj will give us. And even before that, I would request everyone to take a moment and subscribe to News Laundry and pay to keep news free, because when the public pays, the public is served. When advertisers pay, advertisers are served. And as you can imagine, now there's a second hafta that Manisha is not here and Atul wasn't here. So you know that they have been in Gujarat for over a week, before that in Himachal Pradesh. And believe it or not, it costs money to travel and sustain in other cities. And we don't take ads. So I hope you will fill up our NL Sena for the election coverage. And also, well, there's very little left for our legal fund. That's part of the headlines, but I will tell you, you'll be maybe pleased or not pleased to know that a Delhi court has rejected the income tax authority's desire or their petition to prosecute me criminally for tax evasion, apparently. So that is one small victory, but there are still 4 cases happening in the High Court. And again, believe it or not, it costs money to fight these cases. And again, believe it or not, we don't take ads. So don't be so stingy with your ill-gotten wealth. And those of you who have not ill-gotten it and have gotten honestly, don't be stingy with that either. Go to newslaundry.com, click on subscribe and pay to keep news free. That's my bit. Mehraj, sorry for boring everyone. You can give us your headlines now.
All right. So we'll start with the media headline, the big media headline of the week. Pranoy and wife Radhika Roy, founders and promoters of NDTV news channel, have resigned as directors from the board of RRPR Holding Private Limited. RRPR is the promoter company of NDTV. They resigned on November 29th. The very next day, Ravish Kumar, senior executive editor at NDTV India, you could say the face of NDTV India, put in his papers with immediate effect.
Also put out a 26-minute
Video statement.
video statement, a monologue on his channel.
Yeah. And as you already said, a Delhi court has dismissed 3 complaints filed by the Income Tax Department against News Laundry co-founder Abhinandan Sekhri, whom you know, and others in connection with the valuation of the company's shares.
But yeah, before we get to the rest of the headlines, I will say that this entire NDTV imminent takeover has caused more of a furor online, at least, than I thought it would. I thought it would go without a ripple. It's causing quite a bit of noise.
Yeah. Even though it was expected, of course, after the August, when Adani bought that one company and it was imminent, as you said. But yeah, it's surprising that how much furor is happening right now, how much noise is being created. I think people are realizing that now it is actually gone. I think people still had some hope, probably something will happen.
Kuch ho jayega.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll discuss that in some detail.
The first phase of voting for the Gujarat election began at 8 a.m. today. Polling is underway in 89 of the 182 constituencies, and as many as 788 candidates are in the fray. Congress has complained to the Election Commission about non-functioning EVMs at least 50 booths. Piyush Patel, the BJP candidate in One Star, was reportedly attacked by a group of over 24 people near Jari village. The second phase of the election will be held on December 5th, and the votes will be counted 3 days later on December 8th.
And while we are sitting here, Mr. Modi is doing a roadshow, as is Mr. Kejriwal, and they have figured out the perfect solution to any क्या कहते हैं प्रतिबंध लगता है ना election
model code of conduct.
So because one part of the thing is working, they are doing a roadshow on the other part. So that is, I mean, anyway.
Campaign goes on.
And also the MCD campaigning is happening right now. Pretty much every senior leader and chief minister of the BJP is here campaigning with MCD. And if you saw today's newspapers, on the front page is a full page ad of Modi ji waving and G20 leadership. We take over today. India gets the presidentship of the G20 presidency today. And you turn the page, on the second page, there's a half page ad of Modi ji waving. I think they use the same picture even. MCD ki hum bathroom banayenge, latrine banayenge, ye wo. So, best thing that I overheard from someone this morning is, Modi ji फैसला कर लो, G20 host करने की municipal election लड़वाना है.
No, but the domestic use of G20 is as good as MCD, no? So they are very good at...
Modi ji is the example of local, you know. From local to global, he's everywhere.
Right.
Carrying on, the government has asked the Supreme Court Collegium to reconsider 20 files related to the appointment of High Court judges, including that of Advocate Saurabh Kirpal, who recently had an interview with Abhinandan. He can tell you more about that.
But full disclosure, he is also representing us in the High Court. He is, I think, India's first openly gay senior advocate, whose father used to be the Chief Justice of India, Justice Kirpal.
B.N. Kirpal.
And he has been recommended for judgeship, I think it's the second time now. I think the first time his file was...
In 2017 he was...
Yeah, that's what he said. So you can check out the interview. That's also going to be a recommendation. It's
Pretty
behind
good
the
interview.
paywall. He's a really smart and fascinating man to talk to. And now his judgeship has been rejected. But what's the deal? If they send it back again, the collegium, then they have to accept it, right?
So it's not rejected
No.
yet. Yeah, I mean, the government has not passed the order.
Okay.
But according to the rules, essentially, if the Supreme Court reiterates, the government has to, pass the order, appoint them.
But
the government has not done that.
So the government has accepted 2 names.
Yes, 2 names.
And the rest they've done what? They have not said anything.
No, they have not said anything. They sent the file back to the Supreme Court.
No, 9 out of these 20, this for the second time it was sent to them.
Yeah. Right.
The government has sent it back for the second time.
Yeah.
For
So
reconsideration.
what is that if not a rejection? What is that counted as?
It's not a rejection. It's just like they're not approving
It will just keep going.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
this.
ideally this should not be happening, but I think government is trying to push for another NJACs. That's a way to lay down that path.
Right. Okay.
The Adani Group on Tuesday emerged as the highest bidder for a project to redevelop the slum cluster of Dharavi in Mumbai.
From Aurangzeb to Dharavi, sab kuch Adani ji ka.
He's the new Hiranandani
Hiranand.
of Mumbai.
And Ambani.
And
everything.
Ambani. He's everything.
Down south in Kerala, a mob stormed a police station on Sunday night, injuring 36 police personnel as months of protests against a port project, again by billionaire Gautam Adani's company, escalated into violence.
Chalo ji. He's
The protests are mostly led by the local fishermen who have alleged that at least $900 million project is causing coastal erosion and destroying their livelihoods. Bilkis Bano has approached the Supreme Court challenging the premature release from jail of 11 men convicted of gang raping her and murdering 7 members of her family during the 2002 Gujarat program. There was a controversy in the world of films and entertainment. Nadav Lapid, jury chief at the International Film Festival India, slammed the inclusion of the Kashmir Files film at the event. The film is famously by a friend of Abhinandan's. Describing the film as propaganda, Lapid said he was shocked that it was included in the competition category. The director's comments led to a furore, no surprises. And after that, Israel's ambassador to India publicly denounced the filmmaker from his country and apologized to India in an open letter on Twitter. The Lapid later had an interview with Rahul Kamal on TV. And when Rahul Kamal asked him if it was his own views that he was speaking, like basically shooting off his mouth without consulting anybody else. So, and I quote, he replied, and I quote, "I have a suggestion. Since you consider yourself a serious journalist, I hope you can call French and Spanish jury members and ask them. I guess you have their email and phone numbers."
All Rahul does look surprised. But yeah, we shall discuss this in a little detail as well.
A college professor at Manipal University in Karnataka has been barred from taking classes after he allegedly compared a Muslim student's name to that of a terrorist.
Yeah, this is the audio of what happened.
These jokes are not acceptable. Okay, sorry. You can't joke about my religion that in such a derogatory manner.
No, you're just like my kid.
No, if my father says that, I disown him.
It's a funny thing.
No, it's not, sir. It's not. 26/11 was not funny. Islam terrorism is not funny. Being a Muslim in this country and facing all of this every day is not funny.
Just like my son.
No. Will you talk to your son like that?
My son, no.
Will you call him by the name of a terrorist?
No.
Khalas. How can you call me like that?
No problem.
In front of so many people in a class.
Sorry, I told you.
You're a professional. You're teaching.
Yeah, sorry.
You can't call me that.
Sorry, I told you.
Sir, sorry doesn't change how you think or how you portray yourself here.
But hats off to this boy. I think he was rather polite in his protestations. He says you should not be talking to people like that. And of course, then the professor was very polite. No, you are like my son. I am not meaning to do that.
And the boy said, would you call your son by that name?
Right.
Yeah.
The Reserve Bank of India on Tuesday said it will launch the pilot run for digital rupee on December the 1st. Singapore Airlines on Tuesday said that Vistara will be merged with Tata Group's Air India by March 2024.
Yeah, this was big news. But sorry, just coming back to the early news. So what does that mean? That the digital rupee will be what? What is a digital rupee? Is it a rupee
Wasn't it
with
supposed to be a crypto
E-rupee,
thing?
I think.
the microchip in it?
No, it's the e-rupee. I mean, it's not a physical thingy. It's just...
Will it be something like a crypto, or is it something...
Yeah, what
completely
does that
different?
even mean?
See,
Maybe
but
we
the
should-
idea behind crypto is that crypto is open source and nobody controls it. There's no one central authority
Right.
controlling it. But this is controlled by the RBI. So it will not be crypto, but it is a digital currency.
Which is mined, like crypto is mined.
No, it is still not mined. It's still RBI controlled.
Okay.
But isn't this the worst time to come up with this, given what has happened with that FTX exchange and all that stuff?
And considering
That's
how
gonna-
well they timed demonetization, see, there's certain things, there's never a good time for it, Mehraj. So don't put ideas in the head. Let's time this again.
Yeah, they might ban physical currency from tomorrow,
The police in China have blocked citizens from protesting against strict anti-COVID measures in several cities. During the protests, Ed Lawrence, who's been working in China as a journalist, was detained for several hours, during which time he says he was assaulted and kicked by the police, according to the BBC. There have been lots of videos going viral on social media showing the crackdown on the protesters.
Yeah, and
We'll talk about
Sowmiya
it.
can tell us a lot more about China and what it was like reporting there.
The United States Department of Defense has reported that China may be getting ready to deploy aircraft carriers and submarines in the Indian Ocean region at its military base in Djibouti, which is the Horn of Africa.
And also, in an internal communication of their defense department, they had said that China... No, sorry, this was, I think, presented in the Congress there.
Yeah.
That their Secretary of State had sent this in a communication to someone that... which was present that China had leaned on America to stay out of
The India-China relations.
India-China relationship, the context being Ladakh
So
clash.
annually, the American Department of Defense, they bring out a report about China's military capability, and they mention all these things in that report.
Right.
It's an annual thing. It's presented to the Congress.
I see. Okay.
Iran has hit out at former German footballer and coach Jurgen Klinsmann, demanding his resignation from the FIFA Technical Study Group for his comments after Iran's 2-0 win against Wales. Klinsmann alleged that Iran used dirty tactics to defeat Wales during Friday's game, and he insisted that this was their culture. The exact quote is, "This is not by coincidence. This is all purposefully. This is just part of their culture. That's how they played." Clearly, the Germans have learned nothing.
This being such a big deal and the police standing by, and I did read a news article yesterday that the police has now communicating with those protests directly at their homes or at contacting them.
Yeah.
So while the protest is happening, they're saying, "Ha, beta, jump all you want. We have got all your face recognition, etc." And later they go to them. So it is not like they're nervous about this spiraling out of control. So is that, and of course I was just, joking when I was comparing China and India. I know we are way ahead. so far. आगे कह नहीं सकते. And I've given this example before. I was in a conference in Berlin several years ago, and there were about a dozen of us, journalists and academics and professors from different parts of the world, and we all spoke, and we were tweeting, and the organizers were tweeting comments. And when the Chinese professor spoke, this was about 9:30, 10 in the morning. By 11:30, our session was interrupted, saying that there's some people, Chinese officials from the embassy outside, they want to speak with this Chinese professor who's here, and they took him. They said, "Come back, chalo, ghar." बहुत हो गया. I mean, I was like, fuck. I was like, मोदी जी की जय हो. मोदी जी दिया. हम तो कहीं भी जाके कुछ भी बोल देते.
But this is in a third country.
In a third country.
How can the country allow this to happen?
Well, he went on his own. They didn't force him, but he came and said, look, I should go.
Since
Because
then-
he had to go back to China and teach.
Since then, there have been news reports that China is running these secret police stations across the
Yes.
world from their embassies as well.
Amsterdam, there was this big
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
I
Right?
think
In Netherlands.
it's a new thing which is seeping in. I mean, look at this iffy chairman, jury chairman. He said something, and Israeli ambassador, he had nothing to say. I mean,
sorry.
it was his personal opinion, so he also
I
started.
really don't know why they got involved. Yeah, we'll come to that. We have full discussion on this. So, in your daily, when you were living there, like, again, there was an article today that no one knows where Jack Ma is. Is he in China? Is he not?
See, for the last 6 months, he's been in Japan.
And he's not going back to China, it appears.
Who knows that?
But so, was there this sense of insecurity? Whatever you may say about India, there is no sense of, at least not in Delhi. I mean, it may be there. I may be talking from privilege. In Kashmir, it's there. I know, people in Kashmir have been living for this, not just under Modi, for the last 15 years. But in most other parts of India, there may be certain areas where there's an insecurity. But what is it like living in China? Is it Big Brother's watching you like at a level which we haven't even comprehended yet?
I think in Beijing, I definitely felt that just by the sheer number of CCTV cameras everywhere, right? You constantly feel like you're being watched. You're also checked, even if you're going on a regular sort of tourist visit to, say, Tiananmen Square. And if you happen to have a journalist visa, you'll be questioned. You'll have to show your passport. There'll be a bunch of questions asked as to why you're going there. So there's always, at least in Beijing, there's always this sort of extra caution wherever you're at. But just for your previous point on letting them scream and shout, yet going back to their homes later to monitor them, I think this is a very common thing with the Chinese government. They wait and watch. They don't react immediately. In some senses, they let people express themselves so they can fully understand the situation before they can react. So I think the few days we've seen since the weekend, there have been multi-site protests across campuses and some in Beijing and Shanghai on the streets. So clearly it's a very visual protest. It's under these CCTV cameras. None of them have their faces covered apart from the mask that they're wearing. But it's a hugely sort of brave thing that these students have done. And I texted someone yesterday who lives in Beijing to ask, tell me about the numbers. I'm curious about the numbers. And he said, the numbers is not the right question here. It's just the fact that they've even shown up. And I think that's quite remarkable, because knowing fully well that today I show up onto the streets and tomorrow I might have a knock on my door, or when I'm traveling by subway, a cop can come up and say, show me your phone, and searching for content of the protests, or searching for Telegram app or a Twitter or an Instagram. These are all seen as problematic there. Even the mere action of doing this itself seems extremely brave. And that's what I think everyone's a little taken aback. But I think the aspirations of the young folks in China are very, very different to their parents. So we're also seeing huge levels of disappointment beyond just the zero COVID policy, right? You're looking at 3 years of sitting at home, 3 years of not being able to go back to schools if you were studying in the US, 3 years of just sitting and waiting for things to change. So the frustration of what next, I've lost good student hours, I've lost a prospect of maybe getting a job abroad, all of those things play out here. And I think that's really what's slowly being unpacked as we are analyzing these protests.
Just to add a few points, and Sowmiya can correct me if I'm wrong, because I've never worked there. It's all coming from reading and talking to people who have worked there. While we're talking about the kind of pressures that are there on people over there, how can they vent those pressures? One of the major differences between India, like you said, in India, at least in some states, you can still do certain things. It's a uni-party system over there. One party controls everything. Everything is under that party's direct control. So, you don't have an opposition in that sense. That will allow you or give you some, a refuge that you can do this in this part of the country or that part of the country. That doesn't exist. Second, when we were talking about, which Sowmiya mentioned, they don't have an RTI. I was talking to some journalists in India, like some Western journalists who are working here. A bunch of them used to work in China earlier. So talking to them, I said, how does, newspapers like the Post or the Times or Bloomberg, how do they manage to get investigative stories from China? They said everything, the communication within the party, whether it's from one state or one province to another, to the central party system, happens online. So all the orders, everything is actually on the servers. It's about what all can you access. And sometimes it is easy to access, but you don't know where to look at. And that's where many of the stories are come out from. So while, of course, it's extremely tough, but there is because it's such a centralized country, there's centralization of this information as well, which can be accessed sometimes, which has allowed Western journalists to do some investigative pieces on China, which that kind of system doesn't exist in India. RTI can be denied, even though it exists, but we know what is happening to RTI right now.
Yeah.
More and more are denied. So we can't access many of those orders, many of those communication between government officials that even in China, people can do that.
Ironically, there it is possible to do.
There it is possible. And that's how, you haven't seen a lot of very good investigations by Western newspapers in India. But you have seen that in China, right? So that's what I was very curious about. And I asked some people who have worked there. They said that's how it happens over there.
This is, I think, G figuring out that, dude, I'm at the pinnacle of my power. Just how powerful am I? And let them get used to it. Because he is also facing, certain resentment within his own party. It's not like he has no competitors inside. So I definitely think he's just testing his power. I don't see any reasonable reason that they will still do this zero COVID when it's hurting them more than anything else economically.
I mean, the point that they made, the former Shanghai chief, and again, I don't know the name, sorry, Sowmiya might know that. He's in the Politburo now, the 9-member top committee now. And Shanghai was widely criticized within the country and outside for a very, very strict lockdown last year. And like earlier this year and last year. And yet the guy has got a promotion because he's a close associate of Xi Jinping. So, of course, at some level, he doesn't really care about what the criticism is, even within the country. Because, this is his pinnacle. And he's laying down which direction China will take from here on. And he's not as liberal as some of his predecessors were, especially the guy who just recently died yesterday. And some of his other predecessors. He's not that liberal. He wants to make China, great again. As
Kaga. But
power is one thing for sure, but very practically, I don't think, the numbers don't show that senior citizens in China have been vaccinated very widely. So if you have a situation like you saw in Hong Kong last year, where thousands of people died, that just looks really bad for Xi Jinping, right? That's very, very bad optics, that your own vaccination that you produced didn't work, or you weren't very good at rolling it out to this large community of seniors. So that is also one of the main reasons which keeps coming up in a lot of these reports that you read coming out of China is if you do open up, what will happen to the spread of the virus and how will it affect senior citizens? And what would that show about the government's sort of, 3 years down the line, this is where we're at in terms of vaccination. So I know there is definitely the I'm the most powerful leader sort of phase, but on a practical level, they've sort of messed up on the COVID vaccination rollout.
Just one more point to this to bring together what we were discussing earlier, football, World Cup, and China's reaction to what is happening, or how it has led to this. There were reports that a lot of people in China were exposed for the first time about that the world is moving on. When they're watching the World Cup, the audience shots, they see nobody's wearing a mask.
Yeah.
And they realize, okay, the world has actually moved on and we are still stuck with zero COVID. Sequence of events. So basically 2007-8, the Roys were highly indebted. They had taken a lot of loans from international banks and Indian banks. They couldn't repay the loans. Recession hit. They had overestimated the capacity to repay. So eventually to repay those loans, they took a loan of about 403 crore rupees from a company which was directly a subsidiary of different Reliance companies. So the deal was between Reliance companies and RRPR Holding Private Limited, which is one of the promoter entities of NDTV. So there are three promoters of NDTV, RRPR Holdings, which stands for Radhika Roy Prannoy Roy. So this is one promoter entity. The other entity, there are two people who are the other entities. That's Radhika Roy and the other entity is Prannoy Roy. RRPR held 29.18% shares of NDTV. Radhika Roy and Prannoy Roy together hold a little more than 32% shares of NDTV.
Right.
So Radhika Roy and Prannoy Roy still hold that. Going back to what happens, so they take this loan from Reliance related companies a few years down the line. Now, the very elemental part of the loan deal was that it gave RRPR's entire holding of NDTV as debentures to this company. The company was called VCPL. It's a shell company. Now, under the deal, at any given point for the next 10 years or even after that, whether or not Roy's are able to pay back the money, the deal allowed VCPL to convert all the debentures into equity. Basically, it could end up owning all of RRPR's shares of NDTV.
Yeah.
So eventually, the holding of VCPL changed hands. It went to another person. His name is Surendra Lunia, if I'm not mistaken.
We've done a story on that.
Yeah, the excellent story that Newslaundry has done maybe a couple of months back about how this guy is still related to, of course, Reliance. Many people might call him a front for Mukesh Ambani. That's for them to say. But of course, he's related to Mukesh Ambani still. So Mukesh Ambani Reliance didn't really own VCPL as of last year. Since 2015, 2016, he hasn't owned VCPL essentially. In August, what Adani did, he went and bought VCPL from Lunia. He gave VCPL, he paid Lunia 113 crore rupees for all of VCPL's equity. Now, VCPL, as we discussed, owned this debt, debentures of RRPR. So Adani said, I own VCPL now. I'm going to convert all the debentures into equity. So all of RRPR shares into NDTV will belong to me. The Roys tried to stall through some technicalities. There was a pending SEBI order which prevented them from, operating in the markets till 26th of this month. There were some income tax notices and everything. Roy said we cannot do this unless we get the clarity on these things. Adani, of course, because he has proximity to many people in power right now, he got all those issues sorted.
All those clearances done very quickly.
Very quickly. Actually, it's very interesting. In July, there was a SEBI order. There was a...
Yeah, it was SEBI order barring them from...
No, there was the appellate authority or SEBI had quashed multiple orders that were already pending, which cleared the way for the VCPL deal to happen, VCPL RPL deal to happen. At that point, the NDTV put out a very victorious statement. See, we were right. Now it appears...
They say why.
It was exactly...
It wasn't to...
It wasn't a victory for the Roys.
It was basically to pave the way for this.
Basically clear the path for the deal to happen.
The levels at which this happens?
Exactly. So after Adani bought VCPL, now the 99.5% of 29, some slightly over 29% of NDTV shares are with VCPL now, which is owned by Adani. Parallelly, Adani has also launched an open offer. As of yesterday, 8 point something percent of NDTV shares are already tendered by people who own them to Adani now. So once it is over, even as of yesterday, Adani will own about 37% of NDTV once the open offer clears. So he becomes the single largest shareholder.
And eventually he will own how much once he gets...
That depends. If the open offer is entirely subscribed, open offer, he's willing to buy 26% of NDTV shares. If entirely subscribed, he'll end up owning 55% of NDTV.
That's 26 plus 29.
Yeah, so 55% of NDTV. But even as of yesterday, the open offer ended, he would still end up owning 37%, which is more than 32 point something percent of the Roys.
He will be the major shareholder.
Largest shareholder.
Right. So, two things, and Sowmiya, Mehraj, jump in whenever you want. One is that, one little bit of related but not so related intrigue of this was that when MJ Akbar was running this newspaper called the Sunday Guardian, and in fact his son Prayag was the editor at the time, and the Roys had filed a case against Prayag and MJ. They had done a cover story. This is, I think, sometime in the 2010s, 11s at some point. That ICICI Bank had actually given the Roys a 400 crore loan around 2008-9, sometime then, to bail them out because they had to pay off. Apparently what had happened was that there was some rumor that a big industrialist was trying to buy out NDTV, and they had offered to buy back a certain amount of shares, which triggered an open buyback, and they have to then buy back whoever wants to. And that's when 2008 happened. And that buyback has to happen at the price that you had bought the initial shares. So therefore, they had to shell out a lot of money. Now, according to the Sunday Guardian story, because of their proximity to the UPA and Chidambaram, Mr. Chidambaram kind of nudged Mr. Kamath, who was heading ICICI at the time, to give him that loan. Now, when this story happened, that ICICI Bank is using people's money to bail out the Roys, etc., other than file a case against them, they had to quickly say that, dude, just let's pay off this loan so we don't look bad. Or maybe, Chidambaram, maybe election is coming, whatever. And there's only one person in the country who has that kind of money. And his name is Mukesh Ambani. So, ghoom phir ke. In fact, if any of you have any friends who do stock trading, you should hear some stories about how many large industrialists to save their stock price have gone to Ambani and what happened. These are all urban myths and legends.
The benevolent Mr. Ambani.
That whenever, and of course how he plays it, just like this. The payback comes years later often. So that's essentially what happened. And to pay off that loan, they took this loan from Mr. Ambani. And I remember this was, I think, 2012 or 13, when, this is after this loan, when NDTV celebrated 25 years of their existence at the Rashtrapati Bhavan, when we did a story on it, and we also put an application, seriously, that we want to celebrate a 3rd anniversary at Rashtrapati Bhavan. How much do it cost? Tent house kitte ka hai? We were told to piss off. But anyway, so I was like, hello yaar. Can you imagine today if like in the Rashtrapati Bhavan, if Z does it, we'll all be outraging about it. So we did a story about that. But so at that time, one of the 25 greatest Indians of all time was Mr. Mukesh Ambani. He flew down, accepted the award at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Shah Rukh Khan was also there. Ratan Tata was also there. I remember doing a piece.
I remember like when I asked NDTV about this, how did you manage to get the Rashtrapati Bhavan for your anniversary? They said there are protocols that the president of the country cannot go anywhere else for a private ceremony, so it has to be held at Rashtrapati Bhavan. Which of course I don't think was
They
true.
should have told us you would invite it, Rananda. They just turned us down.
you can invite the current president.
Arunab was the reporter. He said, seriously? I said, yeah, go ask them that we also want to have our party there. What's it going to take?
Yeah, about this benevolent Mr. Ambani, I think through Lunia he has pie in almost all the
Yeah, exactly. That's what the Newslaundry story shows, that he has got hands in a lot of media entities.
Yeah. So, but the one thing, and Mehraj and Sowmiya, please come in. The boys in the studio are hogging all the conversation because we can't see you, so you can't raise your hand, but interrupt rudely whenever you want. But I just want to say that, how does the Lunia and all these guys, if you're listening, Mr. Ambani or Mr. Lunia, just teach us also, all honestly, when Madhu wants to, pass on her shares to me or Prashant or Rupak, pretty there are 10 people investigating us. टुच्चे से shares होंगे 10 piece 40 lakh के. These guys are transferring 409 crore company, fucking no one's asking them, teach us also, bro. How do you do?
And they've transferred those many shares for 113 crores. So that's what Adani paid to Lunia. For 113 crore, he got stocks which are worth a lot more. I mean, they were worth 403 crores. Now imagine he's willing to pay, and that's a discounted price. For the open offer, he's willing to pay 490 crores for 26%.
Has IT rated him?
Who? Adani?
Yeah.
No.
I think it might happen soon after this
done.
podcast.
It's done. Next, our 11th year celebration is at Rashtrapati Bhavan, and we are changing our CA to whoever Mr. Adani's CA. Film festival that happened, that is quite an amazing film festival that, that happens every year, IFFI. And the gentleman's name, I will just, so I don't get it wrong. The chairperson of the IFFI's jury's name is Nadav Lapid. I guess how you pronounce it. Nadav Lapid. Let's just call it Lapid. Let's just call it Lapid.
I think it's Lapid. I think it's
Lapid.
Israeli,
So Mr. Lapid, who is a Israeli filmmaker who has very cutting and critical commentary on Israel as well, said that the Kashmir Files was being unduly pushed for no reason. I was surprised, and it is a vulgar propaganda film. And everyone lost their shit. I can understand everyone losing their shit, theek hai, kar diya, but it's not such a big issue. It was bloody prime time on every channel. And as if from Mr. Rahul Kamal to Mr. Arnab, he was on every channel talking about, now this is the problem. The right wing, this is their intellectual giant. Then of course everybody will make fun of you and you'll sado. Even though you're so powerful, you'll still sado because we are making fun of you. Now, you have to see this interview of Rahul Kamal to believe it.
Yeah, I saw that.
It was and he was overacting. Yeah. Yes, he is making faces. How dare you say that? What are you doing? What are you doing, baby? मतलब शक्ल तो देखो अपनी. And सुन लिया Africa, मुफत खोरों. Not to brag or anything, but Newslaundry Hafta features in the top 50 in the world on SoundCloud in the news and politics category for podcasts. So do subscribe and see what you're missing, because when the public pays, the public is served. When advertisers pay, advertisers are served. Subscribe, help keep news independent and free. All Newslaundry podcasts are available on iTunes and Stitcher and any other podcast platform.